All right, everyone, welcome back. And today we're going to be looking at lesson number 3. So, as you are going on your journey to become, or reach your dreams, reach your goals, right? My goal is to help everybody to build the right type of mindset that's going to get them the results they want, right? So lesson 3, quick one for us today, but couple of important things, right? So the first important thing is tackling some of the myths that you're gonna come up against, right? And the first one is that hard work guarantees success, right? And the reality there is that hard work needs to be married to a growth in utility, right? So if you just imagine somebody in maybe China or Africa that's picking rice in a field, they are not going to, they could work 100 hours a day for $4 an hour. They're not going to dramatically improve their life, right? And so what you need to do is you need to work hard, but you also need to really, really work hard at growing your utility, right? And what we find is that a lot of great talents are lost because they are focusing on technique, but not the underlying decisions on why to hit the shot, when to choose the shot, when to not choose the shot, and the tactical stuff, right? And technique by itself is great but useless, right? Your only chance is if you play someone who is, tactically poor, right? And there's lots of players, if you think of someone like Andre Medvedev now, who doesn't have the best looking game, but he's number 5 in the world because he knows how to win, right? So that's the utility that you want, is the ability to win matches, right? And technique and fitness can only take you so far. You got to have them. It's not like you can live without them. If you have the worst technique in the world, that's going to hamper you at some point, right? But reality is, and we'll go to myth number 2 here, that you need flawless technique. You don't. You need functional technique, and you need to be able to do what you want to do with the ball reliably, right? What a lot of people lack is nuance. So they lack touch, they lack feel, they lack defensive skills and the ability to kind of bring the ball back from awkward situations. And mostly what I've seen is because people are training from positions where they get to make the choice on where the ball goes, and not necessarily practicing enough where they have to react to where the opponent has sent them. And then, for the most part, one of two things: an overuse of risk and brute power, where that's the answer to every situation, right? What should we do? Yeah, hit it hard. What about now? Hit it hard. What about now? Hit it hard, right? But if you think about Alcaraz, nice easy example is how much he uses the drop shot, how much he uses the threat of pace on the forehand to get people to take a step back, and that makes the north-south distance longer. And now he's got that very, very good high finesse, high utility drop shot that he can use to take advantage of that, right? So that's what you want. You want to work on utility. You want to work on getting your technique good enough that if you need a lob, you can. If you need a dipper, you can. If you need to add pace, you can. If you need to absorb pace, you can. If you need to take it on the rise, you can. But your technique, instead of aiming for flawless, aim for depth of skill. So the ability to do a lot of things comfortably. Just like I mentioned before, you've got good touch, you've got good half volleys, you've got good defensive skills, and you don't necessarily need to have the knockout punch best shot in the world. And especially early on in your career, you almost have to be careful developing a huge weapon too soon. Because what happens if you have the best serve or the best forehand in the 14s, 16s, 18s is that points never develop. You serve an ace, points over, right? But what you don't get is the opportunity to have to use 5 or 6 shots to get the job done. So you're almost better off saving that for later. Focus on power in your later years, but focus on developing your skill to structure and build points, right? Okay. So the other thing, let's just stick on that one for a second, that technique cannot do for you is it can't manage your emotions, right? So what you see very often is people that have excellent technique, but they perform poorly, right? So I want everyone to, in their notebooks, make a note of that word, because your performer skills, which is essentially everything to do with your ability to go out on a court with 500 people watching, with a lot at stake, and manage the match, your emotions, your decision making, well enough to get the job done, right? So we've all done it, we've all choked, we've all gotten tight, we've all played not enough risk and given away opportunities to take out, or too much risk, and the opportunities over very quickly. But the expression that we have, which I like, keeps it simple, is that your emotions have to go to school, right? And you have to teach yourself how to have the right emotional makeup that you can handle those high pressure situations and perform well, right? And one of the ways you do that is just to get out there and battle, and get used to accepting what you have on the day, right? So let's say you're serving 30% first serves. Now it's easy to say, I'm going to lose, it sucks, my first serve is not working. Or you can say, let me see if I can get the job done without my first serve. So let me take a bit off, let me work the second serve, and let me see if I can use my defensive skills or some other tool to compensate for the one that isn't working, right? Okay, the next one we have is winning isn't easy, right? So in tennis, the number one skill set that you are paid for, and by payment, I think if you really want to make money out of the game and really achieve, you're looking for a D1 scholarship or some way to get your education handled. You get a monster degree, master's, PhD, something like that, and you're making $200,000 a year from the get-go, which is $2.4 million a decade, if not more, for the next 40 years. So that's a $10 million payout if you can get a D1 scholarship. And obviously then if you go further and you play pro, that's great. It's unfortunately very low numbers of people who get to do that. Low numbers too of scholarships, to be fair. I mean, you're looking at 1% of people, right? But anyway, you get paid in this sport to solve complex problems under emergency time conditions, right? And it seems easy from the outside, right? I've said it a million times. Just imagine if I put a plank down on the ground, a 2x4, and I said walk across it. Easy peasy. You can do that with your eyes closed, right? But if I lift that plank 30 feet off the ground, it's much, much harder to walk across that plank, right? And when you go into a match, it feels a lot more like you walking on that high plank than the one on the ground, right? So it's much harder to make decisions. It's much harder to control kind of like surges in emotion. And as a result, you play points with feelings that are not normal, right? They're much higher, much more intense, and much more pronounced than they are in practice. And it's very hard to duplicate that, What I've done for my players is to build them an app which ranks them according to different drills, and basically trying to imitate, when you're, the top guy in the academy has 60 on a drill and you're sitting at 42 in a row. Now you're starting to think, wow, I could break the record if I make the next 18. And hopefully the pressure comes and maybe some of the nerves come and maybe some of the performance stuff comes, so you get a chance to practice it, right? So the more you go through it, the better off you are, right? Okay, myth number 4 in our quick one today is that losing is bad, right? And, this is something that I I encourage every person to get away from as soon as possible, right? You know, if it's binary, winning good, losing bad, you lose out on so many hours, because the minute you start losing, your behavior goes and you can't see any value to the next hour on the court, right? And if you add up all the hours that you lose, it's probably more than half your life on the tennis court. You know, so if half of the time that you're out there, there's no value to it, you know, that's like going to school for 12 years, but 6 of those years don't count. You know, you'd still be in 8th grade by the time you've been there for 12 years, which would be an absolute nightmare, right? So you have to work on a different formula. You have to work on going, no, my time's always valuable when I'm out there competing. And, you know, I started off with the perspective of, you know, if you can't win the match, try to win sets. If you can't win sets, try to win games. If you can't win games, win points. If you can't win points, have the longest rally that you can. But always setting those little micro goals of like, all right, let's try to get 30 in a row. All right, let's try to get a game. Let's try to get... So you're always focused on the next possible achievable thing, right? Now, the difference between losing, trying like crazy, working as hard as you possibly can, and being a loser, someone who is making excuses, who's not trying their best, who's not really doing anything different, so solutions stay the same. There's a humongous difference between those two. But I tell people, you know, self-respect. Take yourself seriously. You know, you're going to lose. It's a highly, highly tactical game, and it's very, very difficult to master that without a lot of years and a lot of at-bats. So don't get stuck into all of that nonsense. Value your time. You know, take yourself seriously when you get out there. Be prepared. Work hard. Fight for every point, every game. And you know, optimize the opportunity to learn how to handle your emotions. You know, if you want to get good at coming back from 5-2 down, you have to be 5-2 down and find a way out of it, right? So we'll leave it for tonight. That's lesson 3, and we'll see you back here for lesson 4. All right, cheers, guys. Ciao.